I've been a park ranger in Yellowstone for over 20 years, and I've seen more than my fair share of strange occurrences. Missing hikers, wild animal attacks, and unexplained weather shifts. Those are common enough to dismiss. But there's something about the deeper parts of the park that most people don't know about. Something ancient and dangerous lurking beneath the stunning beauty of this place. The morning everything changed started off unremarkably. I was stationed at a remote outpost near the Norris Geyser Basin, a location not frequented by most tourists. Fewer visitors meant I could enjoy the eerie serenity of Yellowstone's wilderness. That week, however, reports of missing hikers were piling up. 3 groups, all unrelated, had vanished without a trace near the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. No gear left behind, no signs of struggle. Just gone. My name's Sam Bennett. After 2 decades on this job, I thought I'd seen it all. But Yellowstone, as much as I love it, has a way of reminding you that some mysteries are older than mankind. The park was slipping into fall, shadows growing longer and the ridges of the geothermal features casting jagged silhouettes. That day, I was assigned to scout Hell-Roaring Canyon, a remote and treacherous area avoided by all but the most daring. It's the kind of place that feels wrong, like the air itself is holding its breath. My partner, Ethan, was new but eager, though even he looked uneasy as we prepared to set out. We started early, equipped with GPS, satellite phones, and standard gear. Our mission was simple: search for any signs of the missing hikers. The park's official stance was that they had likely gotten lost or succumbed to the elements. I wasn't so sure. After hours of trekking through dense forests and uneven terrain, we reached the edge of Hell-Roaring Canyon. The view was hauntingly beautiful. Steam rose in distant plumes, creating a ghostly veil over the jagged cliffs. But the air here felt heavy, charged. I've spent enough time in the wild to trust my instincts, and they were screaming at me to leave. "Does this place feel off to you?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Keep your guard up. Let's check the perimeter before heading down." We followed a faint trail skirting the edge of the canyon. That's when we found the first sign. Bones. Human. Scattered and weathered as if they'd been there for decades. Hidden among the rocks, they were almost indistinguishable from the surrounding debris. Ethan reached for his radio to report the discovery when we heard it. A low, guttural growl that seemed to rise from the depths of the canyon itself. It wasn't the sound of a wolf, bear, or any animal I'd ever encountered. It was something deeper, more primal. "What the hell was that?" Ethan whispered, his face pale. "I don't know," I replied, my voice tight. "But we're not alone." We descended cautiously, flashlights cutting through the thickening mist. The deeper we went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The canyon walls seemed to close in, and the sulfuric stench of geysers made it hard to breathe. Then we found it, a campsite. Tents shredded, gear scattered, and blood. A lot of blood. No bodies, just silence, thick and suffocating. "Jesus," Ethan muttered, kneeling by a torn sleeping bag. What could have done this? I didn't answer. My mind was racing, cataloging possibilities, none of which made sense. The damage was too severe for any known predator. Whatever did this wasn't natural. The ground trembled beneath us. At first I thought it was geothermal activity, but this felt intentional, as if something massive was shifting below. "We need to leave, now," I said, grabbing Ethan's arm. We turned back, but before we could take more than a few steps, the growl returned. Closer this time. And then, through the mist, it emerged. At first, it was just a shadow, tall, impossibly thin, and hunched. But as the mist parted, we saw it fully. It stood at least 7 feet tall, with elongated limbs ending in claw-like fingers. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched tightly over its skeletal frame. But its eyes were the worst, black, endless voids that seemed to pull the light out of the air. For a moment we were frozen. Then it screamed, a high-pitched, bone-rattling screech that shattered the stillness. "Run!" I yelled, shoving Ethan toward the trail. We bolted, the creature's guttural breaths and scraping claws echoing behind us. The path was uneven, rocks crumbling beneath our feet as we scrambled upward. The air grew colder, biting, as if the creature's presence was draining the warmth from the canyon. Ethan stumbled, and I turned just in time to see the thing swipe at him. Its claws missed by inches as I fired my flare gun directly at its face. The flare struck true, and the creature recoiled, its scream reverberating through the canyon. I hauled Ethan to his feet, and we didn't stop running until we reached the ridge. Even then, I could feel it watching us, its empty eyes burning into my back. When we finally reached the safety of our vehicle, Ethan collapsed against the door, gasping. "What the hell was that?" he panted, his face ashen. "I don't know," I said, glancing back toward the canyon. "But it's ancient. Older than this park. Maybe older than mankind." We reported what we'd seen, but I knew no one would believe us. Missing hikers were tragic but explainable. A creature that could shred through tents and people? That was something the Park Service would never acknowledge. But I knew the truth. Hell-Roaring Canyon wasn't just another remote part of Yellowstone. It was a gateway to something dark, primal. And the disappearances, they weren't accidents, they were sacrifices. Since that day, I've never gone back to that part of the park. I warn others to stay away, but curiosity always wins. The missing cases keep piling up, and deep down, I know it's not over. Because whatever we encountered that day, it's still there, waiting for its next victim. If this is your first time here, welcome. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to stay updated with our spine-chilling stories. Your support means the world to us. Share these thrilling tales with your friends and family. Thanks for being a part of our journey. When I first got the assignment to work as a park ranger in the Grand Canyon, I was beyond thrilled. The vastness of the place, the towering cliffs, the silence in the deep crevices. There was a mystery to it that called to me. My name is Ben Keller, and as a new recruit, I knew I had a lot to learn. But I never expected that my first months patrolling the canyon would push me to the brink of sanity. The Bright Angel Trail was where I spent most of my early days, guiding tourists, helping hikers, and making sure no one did anything stupid near the cliff edges. The canyon's beauty could be deceptive, and too many people underestimated the dangers of dehydration or getting lost on one of the offshoot trails. I was grateful to be assigned to such a well-traveled path, but everything changed after I was transferred to cover night shifts in the more remote areas of the park. That's when things started to get strange. The first time I noticed something off was during a routine solo patrol around the isolated North Rim. It was nearing sunset, and the shadows of the canyon walls stretched impossibly long, swallowing up the trails in darkness. I was hiking along a lesser-known path near a place the older rangers called the Whispering Gorge. It wasn't on any official map, but the name came up in conversation now and then. They spoke about it in half-jokes, warning new rangers to stay away after dark, but I thought it was just hazing. That night, as the last light of day bled out of the sky, I noticed something odd. Tracks, not animal tracks, not human tracks either, something in between. They were large, wider than my own boot prints, and spread far apart, as if whatever made them was moving on two legs but unnaturally so. The prints were deep, pressed into the dirt with a weight that didn't make sense for their size. I knelt down, running my fingers through the indents, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. A trick of the light, maybe. But the sun had dipped low enough that the canyon's shadow was now consuming everything, and a sense of unease crept over me like a heavy fog. The wind picked up, blowing through the canyon with a low, haunting howl. I decided it was time to head back to the ranger station before dark fully set in. I radioed in, but the signal crackled with static, cutting off my transmission. Typical, I thought, shaking off the chill crawling up my spine. As I started back up the trail, I heard it, a faint whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind swirling through the canyon walls, but then it came again, clearer. My name. Ben. I froze, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I spun around, scanning the canyon floor behind me. There was no one, just the vast emptiness of the gorge. But the whisper had been too clear, too intentional to be just the wind. I called out, but my voice sounded small, swallowed by the enormity of the canyon. "Hello? Is someone out there?" Only silence answered me. The temperature had dropped sharply, and the darkness was closing in fast. I quickened my pace, adrenaline pulsing in my veins. I needed to get back. As I reached a narrow passage that led out of the gorge, I heard something behind me. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing against the canyon walls. I whipped around, flashlight in hand, casting a beam over the rocky terrain. Nothing. but the footsteps were there, getting closer. It felt like I was being hunted. I started to run. The trail was uneven, rocks jutting up and making the path treacherous, but I didn't care. Whatever was behind me was closing in fast. I could feel its presence, the weight of its gaze boring into my back. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, echoing my name over and over. Ben, Ben, Ben. My heart pounded in my chest and every instinct screamed for me to keep moving. I didn't stop until I reached the ranger station, slamming the door behind me. I leaned against it, gasping for air, sweat pouring down my face despite the cold. The whispers had stopped, but I could still hear the faint echo of them in my mind. Over the next few days, I tried to convince myself that it had been exhaustion, maybe the altitude playing tricks on me. But the tracks I had seen, the footsteps I had heard, they felt too real. I reported the incident to the head ranger, but he brushed it off, telling me that the canyon had a way of getting inside your head if you weren't careful. He said the locals had legends about the canyon, old stories about ancient spirits that roam the deepest parts, but they were just that, stories. I wasn't so sure. A week later, I was back on patrol, this time heading toward a remote section near the Colorado River. It was a place few ventured, even among the rangers. The deeper you went into the canyon, the more isolated you became. No cell service, no radios. It was just you and the canyon. The perfect place for something to hide. As night fell, I camped near the riverbank, setting up my tent and building a small fire. The stars above were brilliant, lighting up the sky like diamonds scattered across black velvet. The canyon was eerily quiet, the only sound the gentle rush of the river. I should have felt at peace, but instead that same sense of unease lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Around midnight, I heard it again. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the direction of the canyon's walls. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it toward the source, but all I could see were the towering rock formations. The sound grew louder, closer. Ben. The whisper was unmistakable this time. It was right behind me. I spun around, heart racing, and saw something moving in the shadows, a figure, tall and gaunt, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Human, but not. Its limbs were long and twisted, its skin pale as moonlight, and its face was ancient, like something that had been buried beneath the earth for centuries. I backed away, but it kept coming, moving with an unnatural grace, its eyes locked on mine. I tripped over a rock and fell, scrambling to get away as the thing loomed over me. The whispers were deafening now, filling my head, drowning out all rational thought. Just as it reached for me, there was a loud crack, the sound of rocks breaking away from the canyon wall. The figure stopped, its head snapping toward the noise. For a moment, it hesitated, and in that split second I bolted, running as fast as I could toward the river. I didn't stop until I reached the water's edge, where I collapsed, gasping for breath. I looked back, expecting to see the figure still following me, but it was gone. The whispers had stopped. I didn't wait to find out what it wanted. I packed up my gear and made my way back to the main trail, not stopping until I was out of the canyon. When I finally returned to the station, I filed my report, but no one believed me. They chalked it up to exhaustion, stress, maybe a wild animal. But I know what I saw, and I'm not the only one. The Grand Canyon is a place of beauty and wonder, but there are parts of it that no one should venture into. Something ancient lives there, hiding in the dark corners, waiting. The canyon holds secrets that should remain buried. I haven't gone back to the Whispering Gorge, but every now and then, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can still hear it whispering my name. I've always loved the serenity of the forest, its stillness, the gentle sway of the trees in the wind, and the way nature reclaims everything. But there are places where nature seems to hide something much darker, something malevolent, and as a park ranger, you learn to respect the untamed. My name is Sam, and I've been a ranger for nearly 10 years. I was stationed in a remote, heavily forested area of the Pacific Northwest, a place known for its vast wilderness, wildlife, and the occasional hiker or camper. The locals, though, had other stories. They spoke in hushed tones about the Watcher's Woods, a stretch of forest even the most seasoned rangers avoided venturing into after dark. They claimed it was cursed or haunted, but I chalked it up to campfire stories meant to keep kids in line. It wasn't until last fall that I began to believe those stories. It started with a call about a missing hiker. I'd handled dozens of cases like this before, so I wasn't overly concerned. People often got lost on the trails, thinking they were more experienced than they were. This time it was a man in his early 30s named Ryan, who had been solo camping near the eastern edge of the park, close to the area known as the Watcher's Woods. I set out in the late afternoon, figuring I'd find him before nightfall. The sky was overcast, casting a grayish pall over the forest. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the trees grew denser, and the air turned unnervingly still. No birds, no wind, just an eerie silence that clung to everything. I radioed back to the station as I crossed into the Watcher's Woods, telling them where I was. My supervisor's voice crackled back, urging caution. "That area is off limits after dark, Sam. Be careful." I chuckled, trying to hide my unease. "Roger that. I'll find him soon." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows through the trees, I found Ryan's campsite. It was in disarray, his tent shredded, gear strewn about as if something or someone had torn through it in a frenzy. But there was no sign of him, no blood, no tracks leading away, just an abandoned camp in the heart of the most feared section of the park. My instincts told me to head back, but I couldn't leave without at least searching a bit further. Grabbing my flashlight, I ventured deeper into the woods, where the trees seemed to close in tighter. The forest felt alive, like it was watching me. That's when I found the symbols, carved into the trees in a wide circle around a small clearing. They weren't any markings I'd seen before, primitive, almost ritualistic. A chill ran down my spine as I scanned the area, my heart beating faster. I'd never believed in the supernatural, but there was something about those carvings that felt wrong. I called out Ryan's name, my voice sounding small in the vast, silent forest. For a moment I thought I heard something. Footsteps. A faint rustling, maybe. I spun around, pointing my flashlight into the dark, but there was nothing there. The silence returned, heavier than before. Then I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper carried on the wind. It didn't sound like Ryan's voice. It was something else, something older. I shone my light toward the source, and that's when I saw it. A figure stood just at the edge of the clearing, cloaked in the shadows of the trees. It was tall, unnaturally tall, and its form seemed to blend with the forest itself. I called out, but the figure didn't respond. It just stood there, watching me. The flashlight flickered, and in that brief moment of darkness, the figure moved closer. My breath caught in my throat as I backed away, my instincts screaming to run. But my legs felt frozen, paralyzed by fear. When the light came back, the figure was gone. I didn't waste any more time. I turned and sprinted back toward the campsite, my flashlight bouncing wildly in the dark. Behind me, I could hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, matching my pace, whatever it was following me. As I reached the edge of the clearing, I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. I swung my light around, scanning the trees, but there was nothing. Just silence. I radioed back to the station, my voice shaking. "I think there's someone out here with me," I whispered. There was static for a moment before my supervisor's voice came through. "Get out of there, Sam. Now!" I didn't need to be told twice. I ran as fast as I could, crashing through the underbrush, branches slashing at my arms and face. I didn't stop until I broke through the tree line and onto a familiar trail. Only then did I glance back. The woods were still, but I knew something was watching me from the shadows. I reported everything when I got back to the station, the destroyed camp, the strange symbols, the figure in the woods. We organized a search party the next morning, but we never found Ryan. His body was never recovered. The locals say the Watcher of the Woods doesn't like intruders, that it takes people who wander too deep, and though I'd always laughed at those stories, I haven't been able to shake the feeling that Ryan wasn't the first to disappear in those woods, and he won't be the last. I haven't set foot in the Watcher's Woods since. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I can still hear those whispers on the wind, and I know deep down that something is still out there.